This is definitely the pinnacle of house renovation. A man, in pursuit of his childhood dream, spent a huge amount of money to buy a castle that had been deserted for 100 years and spent 2.5 years renovating and upgrading it. Now it has become the dream that countless people long for. Recently, Danny completed the repair of the attic door on the top floor, but only on one side of the castle. So today, he decided to start renovating the other side, that is, the leftmost position in the video. The ruins on the first floor were in a mess. To speed up the cleaning process, Danny invited Nick with a big beard to help. Danny was responsible for cleaning the gravel and rotten stones on the walls, smashing or demolishing them as needed, while Nick used an excavator to clean the ruins on the ground. Although this work was time-consuming and labor-intensive, because the occupation of this side of the wall was relatively serious, the cleaning was relatively easier instead. After the ground and the walls were cleaned, Danny bought a truckload of I-beams for building the floor beams of the first floor of the castle. With rich experience, he quickly built the beams and initially fixed them to the walls with cement. During the interval when the cement was drying, Danny started to process the floor frame. He precisely cut each wooden square to facilitate direct insertion into the slots between the I-beams later. Danny was busy from day to night. To speed up the renovation progress, he pre-processed the materials to ensure that the floor frame of the floor could be directly installed early the next morning. Maybe you think he is progressing a bit slowly, but from the perspective of a drone, this speed is not just slow, it's very, very slow. With Nick's help and his installation experience, the progress this time is amazing compared to before. However, after one night, Danny finally completed the construction of the first floor frame. In the early morning of the next day, Danny quickly completed the floor structure of the first floor, connected and marked the abandoned beams on the second floor, and used a lift to replace the new I-beams for the second floor. Next was the construction of the floor frame. With the floor frame, he could travel to every corner of the castle, although it was a bit of a detour. It's not difficult to observe the wall conditions. The walls on this side are much better than those on the previous side, so the renovation progress is much faster. Nick was responsible for welding the I-beams, and Danny was busy building the floor frames. They repeated these tasks, and finally reached the top of the building 10 days later. A thunderstorm is approaching, and glue can't be used in a humid environment, so the roof construction needs to be completed within a few days. Early the next morning, Nick had to leave due to something, so Danny called another friend to help. Fortunately, they had already installed the beams the day before, and today they directly started to install the floor frames. The friend was also very willing to help. After all, who wouldn't want to help a friend who owns a castle? Just when they were working vigorously, the sudden hail forced them to pause, and they continued with the base floorboards only after the weather improved. When Danny stepped onto the roof, he found that this floor had been burned by a big fire. The wooden retaining walls on the top floor and the reconstruction were still intact. Although they were a bit corroded, they were much easier to repair. Now that the floor frames are basically completed, Danny will start the next renovation plan again.